market, Kaylee, kind of an extension of what we saw during the CAS session. But once Trump actually held up that list of tariffs, it was hard to read. But of course, our folks here at Bloomberg did a great job of really going through those numbers. The main thing that jumped out to traders was, quite frankly, there weren't any real exemptions or carve-outs. You mentioned the USMCA. That's really the only one here. People were looking for carve-outs not just on a country basis, but more importantly on a company and sector basis. When they did not see that, you saw a huge turnaround in the market. Futures went from being up 1% from where they closed at the 4 p.m. close to being down more than 1% from that 4 p.m. close. And it is the industries moving lower that you would expect. Some of the big tech names, like an Apple, like an NVIDIA, some of the automakers, like a GM, like a Ford, and of course a lot of companies in the materials and the energy space also taking a bit of hit here. Remember, it's not really clear right now, Keely, what the actual impact is going to be. Will this actually hurt their business long term? Is there going to be some mitigation effort by those companies to, I guess, defray those costs?
Who knows?
That is still the unknown.
Nobody
and if you
knows.
are looking for clarity today, out of what we learned out of that White House event here, at least based on what the market's pricing in, we did not quite get it.
All right, Bloomberg's Romaine Bostick, thank you so much. We'll continue to check in with Romaine, especially...
Can you explain why that tariff chart is a joke? Those percentages were agreed upon by both countries, correct? No, tariffs are not agreed upon by both countries. When both of you agree on certain tariffs, those aren't tariffs, that's a trade agreement. Tariffs are generally done unilaterally.
When we get the formal open of U.S. futures at 6 p.m., we'll be watching the market reaction to the news we got. But we want to get more on this news and turn to Bloomberg's Washington bureau chief, Peggy Collins, who is here with us in our D.C. studio. So, Peggy, obviously, we knew that the president was considering a few options leading up to today, one being blanket rates on everybody, the other being targeted rates. Turns out he decided on both, kind of.
That's right.
He targeted
Kelly,
and blanketed.
I think our reporting in the last couple of days and others was really around the fact that this was a fluid situation for several days leading up to this big announcement. And as the president said this afternoon, this is something he said on the campaign trail that he was going to do, and he feels like he's delivering for the American people. But some of the people that we've got reaction from in our reporting right out of the gate this afternoon after the Rose Garden announcement is that it goes beyond expectations that even some people were thinking over the last few days when they were talking about a possibility of a tiered announcement, a possibility of more investigations. This is a targeted 10% rate across the board, but then certain countries are seeing even higher rates. So again, a lot of the reaction we're hearing so far is that this goes beyond many people's expectations.
Interesting to hear that both Donald Trump was correct when he said that we would be relatively kind to some of our trading partners. You see reciprocals half in some cases of what they're tariffing the U.S. But Scott Bessent was also right as well, saying we're going to start at a high level and then potentially pull things back when we see concessions. Is that going to be the story in the days ahead?
I think in part, but I also think this is so wide-ranging that part of the story is going to be how this impacts the global economy and whether or not it really does reignite inflation. The administration has said we have other things in place like energy initiatives and things like that that will counter effect some of the impact of the tariffs. But we've talked to a lot of economists, and certainly the Fed is watching this very closely in terms of whether or not we'll see sustained inflation or even higher inflation, which is something that the economy has been battling since the COVID pandemic.
Well, and this is all just as we try to assess the economic impact of the tariffs the U.S. is charging on things it's importing. We still will have a massive question as to how the countries affected by today's news are going to decide to respond.
That's right. And we have, up until this point, been reporting a lot, as you know, on the president's relations with allies like Europe. But today we saw that China and other countries in Asia, including India, are certainly impacted. So we'll see some reaction from some of the countries that we've been talking and reporting a lot about, Canada, Mexico, Europe, but now Asia is certainly in the target range here as well. I think also the administration has said from the beginning that it sees tariffs as a revenue raiser, so that will be another thing to really watch. Like, is this something that really does raise a lot of revenue and therefore allow the administration to follow through with some of its tax cuts, which are coming around the bend, as we know very well, in Washington?
If Secretary Bessent is correct in and some of these levies may come down if countries respond accordingly. Are we going to have a parade of world leaders through the West Wing in the days ahead?
Well, I think we've seen a parade of world leaders since November
5
who are
plates
going to
per
Mar-a-Lago
one
and
transport
to
bill?
Washington.
Holy
So I think
shit.
that will certainly continue.
fuck that.
Companies that are affected, of course, the auto industry is one that our team's been reporting on, and we'll continue to follow the impact on the auto industry and auto sales. And we have jobs numbers coming out on Fridays, and Powell speaking in the afternoon, so more to come.
Bloomberg's Washington bureau chief Peggy Collins with breaking news here from the White House on tariffs. Thank you, Peggy, for the insights. President Trump sharing remarks as we just brought for you, and we turn now to a potential reaction from Canada to this afternoon's announcement. Doug.
Why is the second Trump admin 10 times as destructive as the first within the first few months? Because Trump didn't know or doesn't know anything about government, okay? So in the first Trump term, his assumption was just he could basically do whatever the fuck he wants, and because he's like Trump, everybody will kind of like go along with him. He's probably used to having a lot of yes men around him. What he didn't realize was picking a strong Republican or a strong conservative doesn't guarantee you that the person will be a cult worshiper. So even though he had people like Bill Barr, who were huge conservatives and were even famously in favor of expanding presidential power, they weren't willing to go along with his blatantly illegal authoritarian plans for government. This time around, he's aware that that's what he needs to choose. So he's picked more effective people to staff the government, like Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or Pete Hegseth, right? People are either unqualified for the positions but will go along with him, or people who are just sycophants. So he's able to be more effective in terms of what he's doing. And he has plans for just ruling through executive order and executive action and through his agencies. Trump's not trying to actually get an infrastructure bill or repeal and replace the ACA. Remember before, right? He wanted the infrastructure bill. He wanted tax cuts. He wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare. These are things that required governance. You needed majorities in Congress to do these things, and he couldn't do it because he can't govern because he sucks shit at it. He's not very charismatic. He's not very effective as a leader, and he's just not good at like getting politicians on his side to do anything. But now he's just seeing what he can do, you know, with his pen as the president. That's it. So that's why that's why he seems more effective now. It's because he's just doing what he can on his own. Like a dictator.
Ford, the Ontario Premier, is with us now on Bloomberg TV and radio. It's great to have you with us, Mr. Ford. You've called this Termination Day instead of Liberation Day. What will be the response now from Canada?
Well, let's see where these tariffs go. I'm cautiously optimistic that I never saw Canada or Mexico on that list, and it just goes to show you two great countries working together, collaborating together, and building relationships. So it's again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's if that's the case, it's the right thing for both the U.S. and Canada.
Jesus.
Well, and considering Canada was not on that list, we understand the existing regime is in place, so the tariffs that are in place with the exemption of goods that are USMCA compliant. Does that mean, sir, at least in your mind, that it wouldn't be appropriate for Canada to retaliate for this at this time?
That is correct. If that's the case, then I would highly recommend to the Prime Minister not to retaliate, and let's carry on a strong relationship. Let's build the aim.
But you said Biden was a good president, bro. Biden was a superior president to Donald Trump in basically every single measurable way. I mean, except for maybe humor, I guess. Trump is funnier, but.
Fortress, American-Canadian fortress around both countries and be the wealthiest, most prosperous, safest two countries in the world.
You suggested that Canada would bring down its tariffs if the United States did the same. Does this turn into a game of chicken? Do you believe that the White House would respond accordingly?
Did we not announce any new tariffs on Canada or Mexico? No, those were absent from this. I don't know if somebody talked to Doug and told him, hey, by the way, if Canada and the U.S. go to war with each other trade-wise, Canada is going to be fucking obliviated. It's not going to be fucking close. And now he seems like, oh, fuck, well. So everybody in Canada is probably cautiously optimistic, or they're just being careful. They're treading carefully.
Well, I hope so. You know, we're neighbors for the last 200 years, and when we show good faith, or the U.S. shows good faith, you have to follow. This is a partnership that's going to go on for hopefully several hundred more years and decades to come, and we have bigger concerns, both Canada and the U.S., than each other. We have to keep an eye on other countries like China.
Who makes the first move in a game like that?
Well, we'll work collaboratively with the administration and with our Prime Minister, and he'll be speaking to President Trump, I'm sure, over the next day or so, and we'll be working with Secretary Lutnick and to get a clear picture of what this means for Canada.
What about what it means for the auto sector in particular? Because, of course, we learned last week that the president would announce what he made final today, which is that 25% tariffs on auto imports will be going into place. Obviously, parts are going to be included in that eventually, sir. So what impact do you expect that alone will have, even if tariffs on or reciprocal tariffs were not applied to Canada today?
Well, I just hope there's no tariffs on auto, because parts go back and forth across the border 7, 8 times before they get assembled either in Ontario or one of the states, be it Michigan or other U.S. states. It's a system that works and has worked since 1965. I've always said you can't unscramble an egg that's been around since 1965. You have to make the omelet larger. And we're just so much stronger together. We buy as many vehicles as we sell down there. And the ones that we ship to the U.S., 50% of that automobile is U.S. parts. So I think the system is working well for both countries. And it's a great system, especially Canada's buying 400% more vehicles off the U.S. than Mexico does, 200% more than any other country in the world. We have an incredible relationship with the two great countries. They're so integrated on many different sectors, but even the people are integrated. Millions and millions of Canadians and Americans travel back and forth across the border. They have family members on both sides of the border, and we just appreciate. And Canadians love Americans. I love Americans. I love the U.S. I spent 20 years of my life there, and I have a tremendous amount of respect and friendships with our American counterparts.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, Premier Ford. You've been really careful from the commentary that I've heard to direct your remarks at the Trump administration, at the president himself, as opposed to the American people, suggesting that you're looking to reset our trade relations.
One of the biggest crashes in stock market history will appear in the next days, is my understanding. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. Like, some of these prices might be buoyed by the fact that they think that they're going to get individual favors from Trump, or people. I still don't know if companies actually believe that these tariffs are real and will be here to stay. It's just so much indecision right now. Nobody really knows what the fuck is happening, or if any of this is real. This is like a fever dream.
Relationship here on a more positive level, maybe in a post-tariff world. But we've also heard from the Prime Minister that our trade relationship, as we know it, is over, which is true.
Well, I believe in never getting personal with anyone, no matter if it's President Trump or Secretary Letnick. We'll talk about the issues. We may go back and forth. It's no different than...
Jesus, who fucking threatened this guy? Somebody gave this guy a harsh talking to about his rhetoric, because Doug is completely 180 on how we spoke about these before.
Family members around the table, you may disagree, but at the end of the day, you come out united and stronger than ever before. Because again, there's a lot of people that don't see eye to eye with the U.S. and Canada, and especially how close we are. We'll need each other for many years to come.
Well, and when we consider the various figures in the Canadian government, you yourself included, obviously there are many people in the Trump administration who have had a hand in shaping these policies. I know you've been in contact with the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, in particular. Do you believe he had a role in making sure Canada was not included on that list today?
Well, I'm really hoping. I have a really...
Could Trump do anything that would make Republicans in Congress wake up and do something against this insanity? I think Republicans in general have shown, the lawmakers have shown that they're basically going to do whatever it takes to get elected. And the problem is right now, MAGA is unshakable. The question is going to come down to midterms, basically, to see like, oh shit, are we all about to get like kicked out of office or something? We'll look in a little bit at how these special elections went, though, because my understanding is all of these went really well for Democrats, but I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked at them, the numbers.
A very good relationship with Secretary Lutnick.
The two in Florida and the Supreme Court pick in Wisconsin, I think.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He's an extremely bright business person, a very shrewd negotiator. That's his job, and I understand that. And our job is to make sure we protect Ontario jobs and Canadian jobs as well. But again, we're so integrated, everything from travel to commerce and everything in between.
When we consider the way forward here, Premier Ford, is it going to be on a national level here, or will it be by the provinces? Is this something that you've discussed with the Prime Minister?
It will always be on a national level. The Prime Minister will lead these negotiations, and hopefully we can sit down and either get a USCA deal or renew the USMCA deal, and that would be up to President Trump. But our Prime Minister, I'm the chair of the premiers. It changes every year, and we have a great group of premiers, and the Prime Minister listens to what we have to say.
But if your voice will be included in this conversation, what would an appropriate renegotiation of the USMCA agreement actually look like? What changes would Canada be willing to accept?
Well, I thought the USMCA deal that President Trump put together and said it was the greatest deal ever, I'd love to see that stay the way it is. I want to increase trade, and be it the critical minerals that China has cut the U.S. off, be it the high-grade nickel or other critical minerals that the U.S. can't get. There's no one else in the world I'd want to give them to more than our closest friends and allies. That's the way we should operate, in my opinion. We share the same values. There's no two greater countries, an unprotected border, the longest in the world. That's the way it's been for years, and it's worked, and I'd love to see it continue to work.
Well, so how, I guess, in the end, do you feel, Mr. Ford, about what we heard today from the White House? You could frame this as, could have been worse. You could also feel betrayed by some of the comments that President Trump delivered. How would you describe
Well,
it?
I never take anything personal, be it from President Trump or anyone else. I understand he's a business man, and that's the way he conducts his business. And fair enough, he has a job to do. We have a job to do, and I think any negotiation, we meet in the middle and make sure that we grow two great countries and make them the strongest in the world, that no one can touch us. We'll ship down all the critical minerals. We'll ship down all the oil that you need and electricity, anything that you need. We have more natural resources than anyone in the entire world. And again, there's no one I'd want to ship it down to more than our great friends and allies.
Well, finally, as you raise natural resources, we do understand, based on an official that briefed reporters, that coming later, expected shortly, in fact, or possible soon, could be action specifically on lumber as well as critical minerals, which you just mentioned with Section 232 tariffs possible soon. What response would you have prepared if indeed those go into place?
Well, I think we've had this lumber war been going on, it seems, for decades, but majority of the homes built in the U.S. are from Canadian lumber. It would jack up the cost of homes immediately. That's the same as the auto sector. It increased the cost of the American people to buy an automobile. Pharmaceuticals, same thing. Seniors that are relying on low-cost pharmaceuticals, that would go up as well. These are areas that I believe would be beneficial for both countries to move forward and work together. And
is there a way to just pick up items on the ground?
On any of those three sectors?
Yes.
All right, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, thank you so much for joining us with reaction to this announcement we just got from President Trump in the White House Rose Garden. And still ahead, we'll examine the economic impact of the president's moves on tariffs with Danielle DiMartino Booth of QI Research. She's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Experts say these tariffs are a bad idea. Can you steelman the case for scenarios? Or, can you steelman the case for these tariffs? What is the best case scenario here? Why would I steelman these? No. What, like, can I steelman the Holocaust? Like, no. The steelman is that Trump thinks that we can literally make every single fucking thing in this country on our own. There is no steelman here. This is retarded. That's like saying, like, can you steelman, like, potentially some positive outcomes for raping a 3-year-old? Like, no, why the fuck would I even do that? No. Fuck off. Fuck out of here. It's fucking retarded.
I want to get to some, I guess, what we can consider breaking news. It's Pippa Stevens with an alert regarding Amazon and TikTok in a very interesting headline. What more can you tell us, Pippa?
That's right, Scott. So Amazon is reportedly making a last-minute bid to buy TikTok here in the U.S. That is according to the New York Times, which does cite 3 people familiar with those talks. Of course, Oracle and Blackstone have also been in this process, and there are open questions about whether or not China will actually sell. Now, Trump is expected to meet with senior White House officials later today to discuss whether or not this is a possibility. But once again, Amazon putting in a last-minute bid to buy TikTok here in the U.S. Scott?
Okay. Pippa, thank you for that update. We'll just kick it around for a minute. We'll get back to the larger issue at hand, obviously, with the markets, but everybody owns Amazon on the desk. What do you think about this headline?
You know, I've thought about it before, and I've not been able to really conclude on it. I'm going to defer to Andy Jassy, who's gotten rid of all the vanity projects from Jeff Bezos, who was a great...
If I'm reading it right, he is matching the tariff based on the tariff being applied to the U.S. Yeah, but the numbers that he's saying that other countries are applying to us in the form of tariffs are retarded. They're retarded and they're simplistic. It's just a stupid... it's just a stupid way to... I don't know how to express... Like, if you have no knowledge of economics or economies or anything, like how stupid the way these tariffs are. It would be like me saying, we've enacted a new policy today where we're going to punch every single person in society that's ever hit another person. So you go to like police officers and maybe they've hit people, you hit them. Then you go to like doctors and nurses that have worked in maternity wards. And since they slap babies to get them to like cough or whatever to make sure their lungs are working after birth. I don't know if they still do this, but like then you start hitting them. Then you find people who are people who do this to cats, their backside. You slap that. It's just like, it's stupid. Like different companies, like trade is incredibly complicated, and different people have a very sophisticated scheme for how they do VATs, for how they subsidize certain industries, for how they approach tariffing or how they have quotas or whatever. To just say that there's some 1% that a country has on your economy is fucking retarded. I don't know how else to express that other than it's just stupid as fuck.
Great CEO. And so this is not just...
Were the tariffs from other countries even blanket tariffs? No, they're not. That's why it's stupid.
A throwaway vanity project. I think that, you know, given their consumer the points where they touch the consumer, they could probably do quite a bit with it, particularly on the advertising front. So I'm going to just be supportive of Jassy.
You should spend some time examining Trump's claims of other countries' tariffs on us in order to have it ready to explain. No, what a waste of fucking time that would be. Like, any Trumpel actually gives a flying fuck about the matter of the fact for any of these things. Holy shit.
If this is what he thinks they should do, but it's tough to analyze.
We could show Meta too if you want. I mean, Amazon obviously getting a lift here. You'd think that Meta would probably be a little bit red. In fact, it is, and even taking it's marginal move up for Amazon, marginal move down for Meta. But nonetheless, I mean, this is sort of where the conversation gravitates to in relation to what Steve was talking about with the ambitions that they may have.
Ambitions, for sure. You talk about a company that grew earnings 90% last year, and I see the cloud unlocking the profitability there. It's going to be a juggernaut.
The cloud.
But as you kind of refer to it, it's not quite a vanity project. It's something that they really believe in. The advertising component here, has driven some of these names like Meta and Alphabet. I mean,
I can't tell if you're like MAGA looking for an argument, if you're like sincerely asking questions. I think inflation was 8% post-COVID. We are going to hit higher. One of the points of tariffs to help their business compete in their economy. There is no way he doesn't understand this, right? Who doesn't understand this, Trump or me? Like, there has to be some retarded logic to this? No, there's no logic.
Tremendously over the years.
It's just what I said.
And I think Amazon,
if you want to understand Trump's trade policy, just go to Wikipedia and look up the term autarky. That's what he thinks is a good idea. That explains all of Trump's policy decisions. That's it.
is well positioned to really capitalize on the infrastructure they already have and be able to pivot and add this to their toolkit.
Yeah, I would say that the impact on Meta is inconsequential right here because it's already been assumed, I think, by Meta shareholders. If you go back to the big spike when they thought they'd put it out of business, the government, and now it's in the stock that somebody's going to buy it in the U.S.
But even get more granular, what type of infrastructure do they have in place right now that they could really utilize in order to make this even a more profitable business if they took TikTok on?
Okay, we will watch this video though, so fuck you.
Has made a claim about Donald Trump.
For the Canada tariffs, I guess, at least.
Trump has made a claim about how unfair Canada is, using numbers so high, they're kind of hard to believe.
They're charging us over 200% for dairy products, 250%, 270% tariff.
And he's right. He's right. But Trump's claim is an attack on Canada's so-called supply management system. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to put you to sleep with all the boring details of how it works yet, but supply management in the context of dairy is just basically how Canada strictly controls production, prices, and foreign access to this country's dairy market in order to protect it. That last one, foreign access, is where Trump's 250, 270% tariff number comes in. Because indeed, skimming through this 1,400-page tariff schedule, we can see milk and cream, low fat. Canada charges a 241% tariff on imports. As the fat content goes up, so does the tariff rate, up to 292.5%.
Canada has been ripping us off for years.
Yogurt is where you'll find 250.5% tariffs, and whether you're talking about powdered buttermilk at 208% or butter itself at 298.5%, maybe these rates do seem kind of crazy, especially coming from a country like Canada that thinks a mere 25% tariff imposed on its goods is too much.
He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed.
But let's ask the question, how often does anybody actually pay these incredibly high tariff rates?
Almost never. As is often the case, the Trump administration has taken a thread of truth and then applied it inaccurately across the whole system.
Understand about the high tariffs that Trump is talking about, 200, 300, even 400%.
Going up to 400%, you never hear that. Canada's absolutely one of the worst.
So that number just isn't true? none of these dairy tariffs goes up to 400. So in that case, Trump is literally just making numbers up. But the thing about these high tariffs is that they don't actually apply right away, or arguably ever. For the last 3 years running, the U.S. has exported more than $1 billion worth of dairy to Canada. In the entire world, only Mexico buys more dairy from the U.S. than Canadians do. And of the imports Canada tracks, not $1 of that amount saw any tariff at all.
Yes, the 241 or 250% quota exists, but it only exists for product that exceeds that tariff rate quota.
Translation? Let's say I want to buy all of your buckets of American milk, straight from the cow. My government puts tariffs on them, which would ordinarily make the milk more expensive. But they say, hey, Andrew, don't worry. You can buy the first 3 buckets tax-free. It's only at the moment you buy a 4th bucket. And let's call this whole thing the tariff rate quota. Once you exceed the quota...
One big point amid all the headlines, this is from Eamon Havers, who's a senior Washington correspondent at CNBC. He said, I was texting with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt during the event, and she confirms that the 34% tariff on China is on top of the previous 20%. So that means the rate on China will be 54% when these tariffs take effect. All right.
Quota, everything after 3 buckets. That's when you pay the crazy 300% tariff. Canada sets the limit on how much dairy anyone here can import into this country before they have to start paying 200, 300% extra. And until you reach that limit...
Can you explain where the idea that Trump wants to produce everything at home comes from? He literally wanted China and EU to buy more from the U.S., which would decrease trade deficit while increasing total trade value. There can exist a world where trade imbalances don't exist, but the actual trade is flourishing. Keynes wanted to introduce a global currency not controlled by any single government, designed in a way that would prevent trade imbalances. The problem is that everybody has failed in communicating to you that everybody can be successful. Republicans were constantly attacking any demand-side stimulus in the form of welfare, saying that if poor people got too much welfare, it would rob money from the tax base, and that everybody would be paying for losers to exist, and so they're fucking everything over, and that's why businesses get all the money. And people on the left were telling you that billionaires were robbing the economy blind, and business owners were robbing money from you, and Jeff Bezos and Amazon. So everybody in politics, there's just been so much to gain off of pretending that politics is a zero-sum game. Everybody has been playing this game in politics. So if politics is a zero-sum game, well, if we have a trade deficit with a country and somebody else is winning, maybe that means we're losing. That's the idea that's powering so many of these people. It powers progressives sometimes. It powers Trump right now. But it's just this idea that as long as one side is winning, then some other side must be losing. So we have to do something to counter the winning over here by making them lose. And somehow that's going to make us win, because if somebody's winning, it must mean they're taking advantage of us.
Limit. American dairy faces 0 tariffs. But again, not only just the limit on how much dairy anyone here can import into this country before they have to start paying 200, 300% extra. And until you reach that limit, American dairy faces 0 tariffs. But again, not only does nobody ever really buy so much American dairy that they hit the cap where you get slammed by that 300% markup, importers rarely even come close. This data was provided to us by Global Affairs Canada. Every year, they track how close importers got across various categories to having to pay the crazy high tariff markups. And on cheeses, yeah, that cap may very well be what prevents Canadian companies from buying more American product. But on nearly everything else, it's not necessarily the tariffs that stop Americans from selling to Canada. Otherwise, you would expect every bar on this graph to be closer to 100%.
No country has yet met the requirement to implement or to kick the tariffs into gear. So there is no tariff being applied to American dairy imports into Canada at this precise moment.
But let's go one level deeper, because what Trump is driving at, even if he misstates or gives misleading facts, is that there is something unfair about the way Canada treats U.S. dairy. And that is a belief the American government has often held going back long before Trump ever set foot in the Oval Office. Any honest assessment of the dairy trade between Canada and the U.S. must ask the question, If U.S. dairy farmers and processors and producers want to break into Canada's market so badly, why don't they fully use the selling room that they have? Like, why do they so rarely even come close to exceeding their tariff quota before complaining about it?
Your foundries are too close to each other. Wait, do they get like a penalty if they're too close? What do you mean?
Well, the group representing the American dairy industry puts it this way. Frustratingly, the U.S. has never gotten close to exceeding our USMCA quotas because Canada has erected various protectionist measures that fly in the face of their blah, 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 blah. So here's where you have to stop thinking of this as Americans being unable to effectively sell their product to Canada, and more like why Canada doesn't always want to buy American. Because it takes two parties to trade, right? A seller and a buyer. And one big issue seems to be that the Canadian businesses in a position to buy American dairy are often incentivized not to.
The quantities being imported from the US tend to be imported by Canadian processors, who in turn would rather use their own products than use the US products.
Yes, so this is where you do need to understand a bit around the specifics of what supply management actually is to understand why Donald Trump basically hates it.
Supply management controls how much milk is produced in Canada and how much the farmer gets paid. It also strictly limits imports.
Supply management in Canada is old, more than half a century old. It sets strict controls on how much milk farmers can produce based on how much Canadians are expected to consume. In exchange for accepting these controls, farmers are guaranteed a minimum price for all that milk they sell to the processors, who turn all of that milk into the actual dairy items that we see on store shelves. So the supply of milk is carefully managed, throttled, really. And farmers are promised a stable payday that doesn't fluctuate with random variables like weather or disease or...
I think this is, I don't know if we do it the exact same, or I don't think we do it the exact same way, but this is like fairly common, I think, in your agriculture sectors. Like I think in the United States, there's like a minimum guaranteed price for like corn or certain crops so that farmers are always growing enough, just on the off chance that there's some like catastrophic event and then all of a sudden we don't have enough food to eat or something. I'm pretty sure we do this with our crops to some extent as well.
Or market conditions.
There's a real connection, especially to dairy. We like to be self-sufficient in food, but especially dairy, we feed milk to our children. It's perishable, it doesn't travel well.
But the trade-off for consumers.
The result is higher prices than would exist in a more competitive market or a market that allowed more imports to come from relatively low-cost producers, most importantly from the United States.
And in order to fully insulate these artificially higher prices from outside forces, the capstone of supply management is that the government does two things. It charges tariffs approaching and sometimes exceeding 300% on dairy imports, and it strategically decides who is allowed to sidestep those ultra-high rates.
The US processors would really like to be able to deal directly with retailers, directly with consumers, but the import quotas that are in place with zero tariff or near zero tariff are actually being held by Canadian processors for the most part, who have no interest in actually allowing US products into Canada.
And I can show this to you. On this Government of Canada website, I can see all of the companies who currently hold import quotas at 0% tariffs. You might recall yogurt and buttermilk. This was a category that had just 12% utilization last year, meaning of the 3.5 million kilograms of product that Canadian businesses were allowed to import from the US tariff-free, they only actually imported about 1/10 of that amount. And who are these businesses with access to zero tariff rates but not fully using them? Well, I can just click on the link here and we can see processors are a big part of that. Skodidakis Goat Farm, they're a multi-million-dollar company that makes Greek yogurt. Elite Dairy, they make all kinds of cheeses, sour creams, and yogurts. Saputo, scrolling down here, major player in the manufacture of dairy based in Quebec. And if you put yourself in the shoes of a Canadian company that benefits from higher, more stable supply-managed prices, the question is, how much incentive do you have to import from the US the same type of product that you already make in-house? but sometimes sell at a higher price.
The reason why we're not importing is that these import quotas are granted to companies that don't really see any incentive to import more competition.
So if I'm a cheese producer and I strictly produce cheddar, for example, well, I will not be tempted to import cheddar cheese from the US because that's already what I'm producing. So maybe I will only strictly be importing Swiss cheese or Monterey Jack, which would be complementing my current production, but it would not compete against my current production.
But then you have to ask, well, why does Canada grant import quotas to companies that don't seem interested in making full use of them? And this is where we get to the heart of the critique of Canadian supply management and whether it violates the principle of free trade.
The allegation is that the allocation of these licenses has been strategically manipulated in Canada to prevent U.S. exporters from using them. The Americans feel they're not getting access that they were promised under this agreement.
I don't want to suggest that this is the only reason so much zero tariff room goes unused. Canadian milk is held to a different standard than American milk. It has to be RBST free, for example, and that's a growth hormone. And businesses have to decide every day, would Canadians even want the American product if it were available?
And in some cases, it might just not be financially worthwhile to import. A sharp cheddar from Wisconsin may not be significantly better than some of the beautiful cheeses that we can make here in Canada, so there might just not be the demand for it.
But the extent to which Canada is or isn't gaming the system, this has been the subject of legal disputes, one of which forced Canada to make changes to how it manages dairy, but which the American dairy industry still says falls far short. Though the most recent legal ruling before a dispute settlement board ended up going very squarely in Canada's favor. So look, this half-century-old system is a bit like a ping-pong match, but consider how the back and forth might be, in a way, besides the point. American dairy represents a fraction of a percent of all Canada-US trade.
My strong belief is that President Trump is using the dairy sector strictly as an example. We have over $700 billion of trade between Canada and the US. Dairy represents 0.1% of all the trade that's being done. So whether or not they would have access to the Canadian market would not make any difference in the end.
In the scope of the trade relationship between Canada and the US, they're really small potatoes.
But dairy has huge sway in...
Imagine having a president that actually communicated these complexities, specific issues he has with the current system. Well, yeah, so these are the types of things. When Trump says, the reason why Trump is saying like tariff equivalent things, these are the types of things that Trump is kind of referring to. Trump himself doesn't understand it. Somebody must have told him, like, hey, it's not just tariffs that people do, it's other types of trade advantages they have as well. The issue is like these are very difficult to kind of, they're difficult to control for because they're very sophisticated in how they're leveraged, right? Like how can you tell who is subsidizing a thing in a certain way that is encouraging, you know, these kind of market inequities or whatever. And everybody kind of does different things like this. But these are the types of things that you hammer out as part of your big trade agreements. But I guess we've just abandoned doing that now, so.
In politics, and if Trump's plan is ultimately to put America first, Canadian dairy may just be the start.
Okay, I think I might just watch, I don't know if there's any more news today, so.
Matt Brunig here. I wanted to do a video about the success sequence, which is the sort of conservative answer to how to fight poverty. The success sequence is highly misleading, what I call a data cutting game, which I'll show you a little bit more detail on in a minute. But before we do that, let's just get into what it is. I'll show you some of the conservatives that like to talk about it. Here's Ben Shapiro, of course. We'll start with him. He has a little YouTube short about it, so that's nice. Let's see what he has to say.
So here are the three rules. You want to be rich in America? You want to do well in America? You want to put aside the whining about the system? Again, you point out to me an individual instance of racism, I will stand next to you and fight it. But if you want to whine about America, no good. Okay, here are the three rules that you need to fulfill as a person before you can start complaining about your life failures being the result of somebody else's actions. Number one, you need to finish high school. Number two, you need to get married before you have babies. Number three, you need to get a job. That's it. You do those things, you will not be permanently poor in the United States of America.
Okay, so we have, and it's not just him. I've been writing about this for years and years. It is suffuse on the right. So even if you just go into YouTube here and search success sequence, look, we have the American Enterprise Institute, the Millennial Success Sequence in 60 seconds, even though the video is actually 79 seconds. The Georgia Center for Opportunity, another right-wing thing, success sequence. They really, and you see this in the Ben Shapiro one especially. They struggle to not shade towards indicating that they're really trying to talk to black people about it, right? Because that's really, even though obviously black people, because they're only 13% of the population, they do not make up anywhere near the majority of poor people. That's nonetheless like, so there's a lot of that. Here's another one, American Enterprise Institute, Red Pill University. I don't really know what that is. Institute for Family Studies. There's 100 of them. Institute for Family Studies, American Enterprise Institute. Even Dave Ramsey, I think, gets into this. I guess he's kind of conservative. He'll tell you how to save in your IRA and also give you a little bit of conservative advice. The John Locke Foundation. I mean, we could go on and on. And it's
You're going to go over the elections?
The whole thing is bullshit.
Oh, yeah, I'll do
It's
that.
bullshit in an interesting way that's very lucid. Like, you can very lucidly explain why it's bullshit. And I did this last year. I've done this probably 5 or 6 times, but this is my last piece I ever wrote on it. And of course, every time I write on it, I get better. So I'll just take you through this one. And then at the end of taking you through this, I want to show you some data I just pulled from the current population survey using a new data file that I'd never used before until like the last couple of days. That's really cool. I'm not going to do like a data tutorial, but I'll show you something that's interesting that is not contained in this piece, but will also drive home the point about the bullshit involved in all this, okay?
Okay.
So let's start here. What is the success sequence? The success sequence is presented as a series of steps individuals can take that will ensure they have a very low poverty rate. This is described this way. I was talking about Brian Kaplan, who described it this way, but if you notice, Ben Shapiro did as well. Finish high school, get a full-time job. Once you finish school, get married before you have children. Now, what's interesting, and I'm not going to go into this too much in this video because it might bog down a little bit, is a lot of people have written on the success sequence over the years, but they have, I'm a success sequence completist. I've read all of it, literally all of it. If you read paper to paper, the actual rules of the success sequence change a little bit. And it's always interesting to see how they change because usually the change tracks some kind of ideological view that the author has. So in this piece, I point out that if you notice these 3 rules listed here, they don't say that you need to delay having children. But one of the most famous papers, Sawhill and Haskins, the success sequence paper, they said you needed to delay children until you were 21 years old. That's not in here. That's not in this paper, the Wang and Wilcox paper. That's not in now the popular representation of it. That thing has fallen out, I guess, in a lot of the presentations of it. And, that's weird. The other thing is, when you look at this literature, get a full-time job, right, is often not get a full-time job. And this also tracks with kind of the ideological preferences of the author. So, for example, in this one, they call you a full-time worker if you work 35 hours a week or 50 weeks a year. This is in the Wilcox and Wang study. Or you are married and watching kids, but married and watching kids is not full-time work. Like you don't have a full-time job. I mean, don't get me wrong, watching kids is a lot of work, but if you are watching kids, you don't get income, right? And then or 3 are in college, but that's not working either. You don't get income from being in college. In fact, college costs you money. It makes you poorer, at least in the immediate sense. But why is this in here? Because these authors like these things. They like stay-at-home parents. Okay. They like if you go to college. So they just say, we'll just call those people full-time workers. But they're not. They're not. In Sawhill and Haskins, they'll call you a full-time worker if someone in your household works sometimes. There's a lot of there are other elements of this as well. So if you divorce, you are not counted as being married anymore. So in a lot of these, especially in Sawhill and Haskins, if you divorce, you're counted as no longer following the success sequence. But if you are widowed, if your spouse dies, they do count you as following the success sequence. But how is your spouse dying better than being divorced? If they die, they can't, at least if you divorce, they could send you some money, alimony, child support. If they die, that's a total loss. There's no way that's better for reducing poverty to have your spouse die than to have your spouse divorce. But, they like widows, but they don't like divorcees. So, like I said, I don't want to bog on this because we have more pressing, more statistical matters that are worth going into. So let me read you this section because this is the first key to understand just the tremendous bullshit.
Remember when Destiny wholeheartedly disputed all these things last month? What? What part of these things have I wholeheartedly disputed? What are you talking about? What?
That underlies this whole thing. Okay. If you're trying to understand where poverty comes from in a capitalist society, the success sequence is not going to help very much. This is because the success sequence analyses all begin by excluding the vast majority of poor people in the country. Wilcox and Wang only look at
life insurance, oh, never mind, you guys are responding to this point.
At one wave of individuals who are between the ages of 28 and 34, which obviously excludes the vast majority of the population as well as the vast majority of poor people. Now, you might give them a pass because of the data they are working with, but Sawhill and Haskins, these are like the OG success sequence people, they use the current population ASEC file, which provides a sample of the entire population. So they really could see where the poverty is coming from. But instead, they decide at the very beginning of their analysis to exclude from their consideration these 3 groups. 1, families with elderly people in them. 2, families with disabled people in them. 3, families where every member is below the age of 25. Now, you haven't heard, I'm sure if you've heard Ben Shapiro or Dave Ramsey or you've watched some video or Prager or whatever, you've never heard probably that they do this in the study. before they do any of those numbers, where they're like, if you're married and you have a kid, and before they do any of that, they knock out not just all the old people and the disabled people, but also all the people that live with them. And then also all, households that just have like young people below the age of 25 in them. Why are they doing this? The reason they do this is because old people don't work. Disabled people don't work. And if you have a family where every member is below the age of 25, you probably got a lot of college students, right? You might talk about like a household that just has a bunch of college students in it, that have low. So they're basically like, let's get rid of the old people, the disabled people, and the students, right? Okay, that's weird. Many of them are poor. Maybe we should include them in our analysis. But what happens when you do this, okay? Now, in the 2019 ASEC, these exclusions remove 117.8 million people. 36% of all people are removed from the population when you exclude these three groups. 36% of all people. But more importantly, these exclusions remove 38.5 million people who are poor based on their market income, meaning the income they get from working or that they get from owning things, right? Not including government benefits, right? So these exclusions, if you knock these people out of your population, out of your sample, and just ignore them, act like they don't exist, 38.5 million people who are poor based on their market income just get vanished from the file. And that is 65% of all people who are poor based on market income. So the first thing they do, before they do the rest of their analysis, is they exclude 2/3 of poor people based on market income, right? So if you just look at the distribution of paychecks and interest and rents and dividends, the stuff you get out of the market, if you just look at that and you say, where are the poor people, right? The first thing they do is they take 2/3 of those poor people, defined that way, and they just, gone. We're not talking about those people. Excluded from our analysis, okay? That seems suspicious to me. But it also...
Okay, that's a fair point, I guess. Oh, that was me. Whoops. I don't know if we'll watch this or not. Krugman. They don't have a time on Substack on what time the post was made? Okay. Just a quick update after Trump's Rose Garden speech. I guess it's just possible that when we get details about the Trump tariffs, they will be lower than what he just announced, but based on what he said, he's going full on crazy. It's not just that he appears to be imposing much higher tariffs than almost anyone expected. He's also making false claims about our trading partners. Not sure, in this case, whether they're lies because he may be truly ignorant, that will both enrage them and make it very hard to back down. Basically, he's claiming that the rest of the world is placing very high tariffs on the U.S., or on U.S. products, and that he's imposing reciprocal tariffs that are only half what they impose on us. Here's the chart that he showed. The left column shows the tariffs others are supposedly charging on U.S. products, and it's completely crazy. Focus on the European Union. The EU, like the United States, has generally low tariffs. The average tariff it charges on U.S. goods is less than 3%. So where does this 39% number come from? I have no idea. Many people speculated that Trump would count value-added taxes as tariffs, even though they aren't. European producers selling to the EU market pay the same VAT as U.S. producers, so it doesn't discriminate and therefore isn't protectionist. But even if you get that wrong, EU VAT rates are in the vicinity of 20%, so you still can't get anywhere close to 39%. You have to wonder whether Elon Musk's Dunning-Kruger kids are now producing tariff numbers. But you know that having once claimed that Europe charges tariffs more than 10 times as high as reality, Trump will never drop that claim. I don't know how many people noticed, but he's still claiming that we're subsidizing Canada by $200 billion a year. Oh, this is one thing that Trump does. It's been pretty successful. Is anytime he tells a lie or he's wrong about something, like the outcome of the 2020 election, or literally any lie ever, they always repeat it. They never, ever, 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 ever back down. Ever. They always just repeat that lie until the end of time. Aside from the basic mistake of claiming that a Canadian trade surplus means that we're somehow subsidizing Canada, he's inflating the actual trade surplus by a factor of 3. Many, many people have pointed out that error, but Trump is sticking with it, the same way Musk is sticking with the millions of dead Social Security beneficiaries thing. If you had any hopes that Trump would step back from the brink of this announcement between the very high tariff rates and the complete falsehoods about what other countries do, should kill them. Like, this is bullshit. I shouldn't have even read this stupid fucking thing. Like, this is just, these are Redditor arguments. Not even, these are retarditor arguments. So my question earlier was, you can do tariffs on Canada and Mexico On Canada because you're lying and saying there's a fentanyl crisis, and on Mexico because you're lying and saying there's like a huge national security threat at the border that you need tariffs to get rid of. But whatever, fine. I mean, these are both lies, but whatever. That's the power he's citing, and it's bullshit. On January 20th, 2025, you need a national emergency threat, though, to do these unilaterally. I signed the America First Trade Policy Presidential Memorandum directing my administration to investigate the cause of our country's larger persistent annual trade deficits. Including the economic and national security implications and risks resulting from such deficits, and to undertake a review of and identify any unfair trade practices by other countries. So the argument is that I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that underlying conditions, including lack of reciprocity in our bilateral trade relationships, disparate tariff rates and non-tariff barriers, and U.S. trading partners' economic policies that suppress domestic wages and consumption, as indicated by larger persistent annual U.S. goods trade deficits, constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and economy of the United States. That threat has its source in whole or substantial part outside of the United States in the domestic economic policies of key trading partners and structural imbalances in the global trading system. I hereby declare a national emergency with respect to this threat. This act needs to go. This has to be gone. Congress, whenever, if we have elections again, the whole whatever bullshit this act, it just needs to be rescinded or dramatically reworked. It's fucking retarded. It's actually fucking retarded. Like, a world leader could call Trump names, and Trump could literally just write an EO saying, the fact that I'm being undermined by some dude calling me a fat fucking impotent incontinent loser is actually representing a security threat to the U.S. because now enemies won't take us seriously when people make fun of the like, it's just fucking retarded. I always fuck this word up. Someone figured out how they're doing the math. It's actually unreal. Did I crack it? I think I figured out at least a chunk of the math. It's trade deficit divided by their exports. EU exports 531.6, imports 334.4, deficit 198.2. 198.2 divided by 531.6 is 37, close to 39. Israel exports 22.2, imports 14.8, deficit 7.4. 7.4 divided by 22 is 33. There's no shot, right? Vietnam exports 136.6, imports 13.1, deficit 123.5. That's exactly the 90% on the chart. You missed a $20 dono. Wait. Derek Thompson on abundance versus Trump's reductionist economic agenda. We've already watched so much on the abundance stuff. I think we've actually watched.
And it makes me these two.
Yeah, we've watched this guy's chat a lot. Doesn't this mean literally nothing? Yeah, it has nothing to do with tariffs at all. This is basically trade astrology. Is there any actual advantage to having a trade surplus? Oh, it's just trade. It just means we're buying a lot of shit from them. Apparently they're doing a vote in the Senate on whether or not they can block this national emergency. I thought they had to wait 90 days to do that or something. Oh, no. The NEA might make a carve out to where you can overrule it. But you need like 2/3. Don't you need, isn't it like 2/3 of the Senate? Can they really get that many people? I'd have to go and look again. Cambodia texting the White House after getting hit with a 49% reciprocal tariff. I mean, it negatively contributes to GDP, Destiny, but yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Does it negatively contribute to GDP? Are the tariffs that other countries charging us fake or real? They're fake. If this one guy, if he's actually correct, then the what the fuck is my TW? This guy's saying that if you basically just take our trade deficit with a country and then you divide our imports by the trade deficit, then that's how they come up with the tariff number. There's nothing to do with tariffs. Somebody should go through these and check the math on them. Or fuck it, let's just pick a random one and check. It says Laos has a 95% tariff with the United States. So we should be able to go, what website is he using for our US trade to Laos? Let's check. So we exported 40.4 million and we imported 803 million. So what would you do? It would be 803.3 minus 40.4. So that's our trade deficit. And then you divide that by the total imports. Is that what they do? Deficit is divided by, oh no, by the total exports. Wait, from the other country, right? Or no, to our country. Wait, okay, EU. We export 531, we import 333. So you do the deficit divided by how much we export to them. So it would be the deficit divided by 40.4. Is that right? Am I doing this right? That can't be right. I'm being... No, wait. Is this our exports to them? Or wait, EU exports 531.6, imports 333.4. This must be how much we sell to them and how much we import from them, right? So we take the trade deficit and then we divide it by how much we import from them. Hold on. 803.3 is how much we imported. And we only exported 40.4. Why? Oh my fucking God. So our trade deficit is 762 million. So you divide our trade deficit by what we export to them. Wait, I feel like I'm not doing this right. Am I fucking retarded? Am I having a retard moment? $803 minus 40 divided by 803. Wait. Trade deficit divided by their exports. I'm getting fucked up on exports, imports. It's but divided by their exports. Our exports to them is what it means. No, their exports to us are imports. So it'd be okay. So it'd be the trade deficit divided by. Why is this calculator fucking up? Hello? Stop! Why is the number disappearing? 803.3. Stop. Okay, so like this. Okay. And then so the calculation of Cambodia to us is tariffs charged to the USA is 97%. And this came up with 95%. So this is how they're calculating it. Wait, is that actually? Oh, wait, it was Laos, not Cambodia. Sorry. 95%. Oh. Oh, shit. Wait, that is how they... Wait, oh no, hold on, let's do one more. Okay, let's look at Jordan. Jordan. Trade. Deficit. Or United States. What does this calculation calculate, though? Nothing. It calculates like the difference in trade kind of between two countries. There's nothing. I've never heard of this calculation in my life before. They're just like, these are like random numbers. You're not calculating anything. This is retarded. Okay, wait, hold on. Get rid of this scientific bullshit. Oh my God. Just normal. Thank you. Okay, so then let's check. Okay, so for, what did I say we're doing next? Okay, Jordan. That's what I Googled, right? Jordan, balance of trade, USA. U.S. total goods with Jordan. Okay, we exported $2 billion and we imported $3.4 billion. So we would take the trade deficit is 1.7 billion, and then we would divide that by how much we export to them. Am I doing that correctly, right? No, how much they do to us? Fuck, sorry. Fuck me. Okay. The trade deficit is we imported 3.4, we exported 2.0. So 1.4 billion divided by 3.4, is that it? Is 41%. and they said total tariffs charged to the USA is 40%. So this is how they're calculating it. This is fucking retarded. Okay. Based. All right. Do the UK, though? We have a surplus with the UK, so I have no clue how that could work. Maybe they just add something to make it sound better? Oh, or wait. Maybe 10% is just a catch-all with countries that we don't have a big trade deficit with. So like if I check out US trade to Turkey. US trade to Turkey. We exported 15.3 billion. And we imported 16.7 billion. Oh, that's what it is. So 10% is just the base. And then, or 10% is your minimum. So if you don't have that big of a trade deficit, you just get hit with a 10% tariff. Nice. Unbelievable. Okay. This is like astrology, econ math. This isn't like a real finance or econ thing. This is just like random, arbitrary, retarded shit. Okay. Based. Okay. Jesus. What's the BS calculating they're doing? So they're taking the size of the trade deficit and then they're just dividing that number. So the trade deficit is the difference in our exports and imports. They're taking the size of the trade deficit and then they're dividing it by the number of how much shit we buy from them. They are imports, I think. This is just like a random add, subtract, divide. It's like two random. This is fucking retarded. But okay. Do you think this was done? Somebody should ask like ChatGPT to calculate tariffs or something, or ask like Grok. What's an easy way to figure out approximate tariffs and see if like some AI gives you this answer. I wonder if they just asked an AI and this is what they got. Oh, true, yeah. So because Trump wants to charge a base 10% tariff, they're just lying and saying these countries have 10% tariffs to the US. That's how they make it, quote unquote, reciprocal. They're just lying. Oh. So somebody asked ChatGPT to calculate, based on the data from the U.S. balance of trade table from 2020, here is the calculation of the trade deficit as a percentage of U.S. imports. And so these will probably align with basically everything. So if we look for Germany, or wait, I don't think we can tariff individual European countries. We've got to do like the whole EU, right? So Malaysia, it says, is 58%. Somebody find Malaysia somewhere. Oh, here. Nicaragua is 36%. Ugh, I didn't do it. Okay, fuck you. Norway. Oh, the Norway one is really wrong. Why is that? It says 30% here, but it says 18% here. What about Madagascar? No. Kazakhstan? No. Tunisia? How many countries did this thing do? Wait, Egypt isn't even... So the Philippines, this calculates it out at 30.1%, and on here they've got 34%. Based. Oh shit, wait, did you do this? Wait, hold on. What would be an easy way to calculate the tariffs that should be imposed on other countries so that the U.S. is on an even playing field when it comes to trade deficit. Set minimum at 10%. To calculate tariffs that help level the playing field in terms of trade deficits with a minimum tariff of 10%, you can use a proportional tariff formula based on the trade deficit with each country. The idea is to impose higher tariffs on countries with which the U.S. has larger trade deficits, thus incentivizing more balanced trade. Here's a simple and intuitive formula that you could use. Tariff rate equals max 10% of trade deficit with country divided by total imports from that country. Wait, Metalloid, is this an econ thing that I've just never heard before? I've never heard a tariff explained in this way ever. Is this actually real? Does anybody in econ calculate tariffs or whatever this way? Let's say imports from country A, 200 billion, exports to country A, 50 billion, trade deficit 150 billion. Tariff rate equals max 10%, 150 divided by 200 times 100 equals max 10% equals 75%. So you'd impose a 75% tariff on imports from country A. This sounds like it's exactly what they did. Okay. Based. Well, nice country. The Norway number is correct. That first list got AI mathed. Oh, nice.
New Yorkers stop me all the time in trying to find the rationale behind this. And I found it in this book. I'm going to encourage every New Yorker to read it.
Government Gangsters by Kash Patel.
Read it and understand how we can never allow this to happen to another innocent American. Re-election, and you know what? I'm gonna win.
Wait, I don't get this meme. Somebody help me. 5 seconds after I press the sell button. What is this meme? What movie is this from? Or, oh, it's just the green line going up. Never mind, okay.
And now they say, in this country, and now they say, they have the temerity to say, that every single invader that Joe Biden let in should get their own individual judicial trial before they're deported, one at a time. Each one gets $1 million trial in front of a communist judge to decide whether...
Communist judge. This guy needs to fucking I'm just saying nobody would care.
or not, we can send them home. How about hell no? How about we pick them up and we get them out of this country so they can't hurt anyone else in this country?
What is, oh. I think the elections went well for us, at least. Susan Crawford won pretty big, and the special elections were pretty spooky, I think. So we have U.S. House District 6. So in the general election, this was about a 33-point advantage for Michael Waltz. And now the advantage was 15 points, so that's like an 18-point drop. I didn't follow the individual election, so I don't know if maybe some of these candidates were especially popular, especially unpopular, but so that's a pretty huge drop in support. Now, special elections might have different like people voting than the ordinary elections as well, but and then for U.S. House District 1, this is for Gates. This was a 32-point difference, and then in this election it was 14.5-point difference. And then we lost Wisconsin in 2024. Wait, hello? By about a point, and then we won the Supreme Court pick by 10 points. It's pretty significant. I think historically Trump has tended to underperform pretty hardcore on special elections. Trump not being on the ticket significantly hurts Republicans, but I think the reason why is because people just vote for Trump because they're part of a cult and they don't give a fuck about Republicans or anything in between elections. It's pretty crazy that the not to toot my own horn or anything, but the Elon Musk I think spent $20 million in Wisconsin to win that Supreme Court seat, and they got trounced. They got obliviated. How many people voted? Presidential vote, Wisconsin 2024. Okay, so less turnout for the Supreme Court one, about 2.36 million voters for that, 3.4 million voters for the presidential election, but rip. What a time to be alive. Everybody's trying to claim it's rigged. Yeah, they'll do that with every election for at least the next 10 years. That's what they've been trained to do, so. Can you link that calculation tweet? I think I retweeted it on my Twitter, so. All right. Well, I love you guys. I'm going to make sure everything's working downstairs. We should be live in like 40 minutes with anything else. Just want to make sure nothing fucks up today, so be careful. Rip Brandon, Cappuccino, Pappuccino, Hoppuccino, Moppuccino, Cappuccino, Cappuccino, Appuccino, Oppuccino, so I'll see you guys in like 40 minutes downstairs. Don't die, okay? Kick.com/Destiny. Be careful.